Welcome to Simpler Bible, a daily journey to biblical understanding. I think I said this already, but I love these stories of Elisha. And what we're getting into today, some of my favorites. And we're going to see a couple of New Testament references here as well, or I'll refer you to some New Testament places. But today I called this Spiritual Eyes. It's 2 Kings 5 and 6, episode 139. Let's begin at 2 Kings 5. Naaman, the commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and in high favor, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. Now that is a really interesting note, that he's not just a great warrior, he is a great warrior because by him God had given victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. So this leprosy could be leprosy, but in the Hebrew, it's just basically some sort of a skin disease. Could be leprosy, something else, we don't know. Now the Syrians, on one of their raids, had carried off a little girl from the land of Israel, and she worked in the service of Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "Would that my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria. He would cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman, speaking of Elisha. So Naaman went in and told the Lord, his king, "Thus and so spoke the girl from the land of Israel." And the king of Syria said, "Well, go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So he went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, right? So 750 pounds of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you Naaman my servant, that you may cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman the leper comes to the king of Israel and goes, "Hey, here you go. King of Syria want me to give you this." King of Israel opens it up, reads it. "Hey, here's my servant, cure him of his leprosy." And the king of Israel read the letter. He tore his clothes. Have you noticed how often people are tearing their clothes in the Bible? I just want you to think about what that must be like every time we get bad news if we just rip our clothes off. Don't start doing that, please. It would be very awkward. So when the king read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to kill and to make alive, that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Only consider and see how he is seeking a fight with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent to the king, saying, "Why'd you tear your clothes? Let him come now to me, that he may know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horse and his chariots and stood at the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh will be restored, and you shall be clean." So it's important to note that Elisha doesn't even come out and speak to Naaman. He just sends his servant out and says, "Go wash in the Jordan 7 times, and you'll be clean." Naaman was very angry and went away, saying, "Behold, I thought he would certainly come out to me and stand and call upon the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in one of my rivers and be clean?" So he turned away and went away in a rage. Listen to how wise his servants are, though, Naaman's servants. But his servants came near to him and said, "My father, it is a great word that the prophet has spoken to you. Will you not do it?" In other words, if the prophet had asked you to do something hard, wouldn't you have done it? If the prophet had asked you to do something really great and really powerful and it was going to be challenging, and he's like, carry 18 rocks up to the top of the mountain and do all these things, and you have to, like, if he had asked you to do something hard, wouldn't you have done it? He goes, "How much better? Has he actually just said to you, wash and be clean?" They're like, "How much better is that? Like, you don't even have to do something hard. Just get in the river 7 times, you prideful imbecile." That's my translation of that. So he went down, dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Now, we talked about this already, and we talked about it from 1 Kings chapter 17, the widow at Zarephath, and how Jesus references that in Luke 4. Remember, he's preached this first sermon in Luke, first recorded sermon, read from Isaiah 61, says the scripture is fulfilled, and the people are like, "Who are you that you can say these things?" And Jesus says, "A prophet's not without honor except in his own town and among his own people." And remember, I pointed out to you that he says of Elijah, he goes, there were a lot of widows in the land of Israel, but Elijah only went to a foreigner, only went to a Gentile widow. And then he quotes this, and he said, there were plenty of lepers in the land of Israel, but he goes, Elisha only healed a foreigner. And so Jesus is setting up in Luke 4 that the gospel will also go to the Gentiles because the people of Israel are rejecting Jesus. And it really ticks them off. I'll write a little bit more about that in the blog. So he's clean. His flesh is restored. His flesh is like a little child. The Bible says he was clean, verse 15. Clean there means of his sickness, of his disease. And he returned to the man of God, he and all of his company, and he came and he stood before him, and he said, Behold, I know that there is no God in all the earth except for in Israel, so accept now a present from your servant. But Elisha says, As the Lord lives, before whom I stand, I will receive no present. And he urged them to take it, but Elisha refused. Then Naaman said, If not, please let there be given to your servant 2 mules' load of earth, for from now on your servant will not offer a burnt offering or sacrifice to any god but the Lord. I want you to picture what Naaman has done. Naaman is so convinced that Yahweh God is the only God. He goes, look, give me 2 mule loads, as much dirt as 2 mules can carry, to take back with me to Syria. And what he plans on doing with that is scattering it on the ground and making a spot where he can build an altar to the living God and say, I'm serving only, from now on, I'm only serving the God of Israel. And he said, I'm asking for the dirt. And then he says this in verse 18, In this matter, may the Lord your God pardon your servant when my master, his king, goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, leaning on my arm, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, and I bow myself in the house there. May the Lord pardon your servant in this matter. So he says, look, when I have to go in with my king into our temple and worship our God, and the king leans on my arm, may the Lord forgive me. He goes, I believe there's no God but the God in Israel. He goes, so let the Lord forgive me when I do that. And Elisha says to him, Go in peace. But when Naaman had gone from him a short distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, See, my master spared Naaman the Syrian, in not accepting from his hand what he brought. And as the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him. So this is Gehazi. So Gehazi followed Naaman, and when Naaman saw someone running after him, he got down from the chariot and said, Is all well? And he said, All is well. My master sent me to say, Look, just now there have come to me from the hill country of Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothes. This is, of course, a lie, right? Naaman said, Be pleased to accept 2 talents of silver. And he urged them, and he tied up 2 talents of silver in 2 bags with 2 changes of clothing and put them on his servants, and they carried them in front of Gehazi. When he came to the hill country, he took them from their hand and hid them in his own house, and the men went away and departed. And then Gehazi went in and stood before his master. And Elisha said to him, Where have you been, Gehazi? And he said, Oh, your servant went nowhere. And then Elisha says, Did not my heart go with you when the man turned down from his chariot to meet you? Was this the time to accept money or garments, olive orchards and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male servants and female servants? Therefore the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and your descendants forever. So he left the presence of Elisha, leprous like snow. 2 Kings chapter 6. Now the sons of the prophet said to Elisha, See, the place where we dwell under your charge is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan and let each of us there get a log and make a place for us to dwell there. And he answered, Go. And then one of them said, Be pleased to go with your servants. And he said, I'll go. So they went with him, and when they came to the Jordan, they began to cut down trees. But as one was felling a log, his axe head fell into the water, and he cried out, Alas, my master, it was borrowed. So guy's chopping a tree, right? And when he flings back, the axe head goes flying off, kerplunk, right in the river, sinks to the bottom. And he goes to Elisha. So Elisha has kept them from dying. He's raised people from the dead. He's done all sorts of things, cured diseases. And this guy comes to the man of God and he says to him, he goes, Look, man, he says, I lost the axe head and I borrowed it from a friend of mine. Anything you can do about that? And I love just the mundane nature of it. Because it's like, dude, get a new axe head, make a new axe head. It'll be okay. And it really does help me to remember that, like, God is in the details too. Like, God doesn't just care about the curing or the raising to the dead of a sick boy or whatever. Like, but he cared about the axe head. And so the man of God, Elisha, says, Where did it fall? Where did it land in the water? And he showed him the place. And so Elisha cut off a stick and threw it in there and caused the iron to float. So he takes a stick, throws it into the water, and then the iron axe head just floats, boom, up to the top of the water. And he says, There, take it up. So the man reached his hand out and took it up. I think that's one of the coolest miracles. Once again, when the king of Syria was warring against Israel, he took counsel with his servants, saying, At such and such a place shall be my camp. But the man of God sent word to the king of Israel, Beware that you don't pass this way, for the Syrians are going down there. And the king of Israel sent to the place about which the man of God told him, and thus he used to warn him, so that he saved himself more than once or twice. So let me give you this picture. The king of Syria is sending like bands of soldiers to kind of infiltrate the land of Israel. And then Elisha is saying to the king of Israel, Don't go that way, the Syrians are there. Don't go that way, the Syrians are there. And so he's sparing the Israelites. So the king of Syria is mad, and it says, The mind of the king of Syria was greatly troubled because of this thing, and he called to his servants and said, Who among us is for the king of Israel? In other words, Who keeps ratting us out to the Israelites so that we can't attack these guys? Who keeps telling them where we are? And one of the servants said, none of us, my lord, O king, but Elisha the prophet who is in Israel tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. And he says, go and see where he is, that I might send and seize him. And it was told, behold, he's in Dothan. So he sent their horses and chariots and a great army, and they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant of the man of God rose early in the morning and went out, behold, an army of horses and chariots was all around the city. And the servant said, alas, my master, what shall we do? And he said, don't be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed, O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see. So the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. I love this. So the Syrian king comes with his army, surrounds the small city that Elisha is living in. The servant of Elisha goes out in the morning. I pretend he's going out in a bathrobe to get the morning paper. You know, he's got his cup of coffee. Of course, that's not how it happened, but that's the story that is in my head. He's stretching, like they do and he reaches down, he picks up the paper. He's looking at the headlines for the day. You understand, all fiction, right? And then he looks up and he sees the army and he goes, crud. And he goes in and he says, Elisha, we got a problem. There's a whole army out there. They're looking for you. And Elisha goes, that's not a problem. There's more with us than there are with them. And he says, God, open his eyes. And when the eyes of the servant are open, he sees above this earthly army, an army of chariots and horses of fire. And I just want you to pause and notice for a minute. I want you to pause and notice for a minute that Elisha doesn't have to have his eyes opened. Elisha's already seeing this. Can you imagine what it must be like for Elisha to see what you and I can only dream about? Like this veil has been lifted from Elisha and he just sees the presence of God. I have prayed this prayer for many, many years. God, just give me a peek. I want a peek. I hope it doesn't happen when I'm driving. I know that I will definitely wet myself, but man, just to see a peek for a moment, to have my eyes open and see this, that's just how Elisha apparently walked around. So when the Syrians came down against him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, please strike this people with blindness. So he struck them with blindness, and according to the prayer of Elisha, Elisha said, this is not the way. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. And he led them into the city of Samaria. That's the capital city of Israel. As soon as they entered Samaria, Elisha said, O Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. So the Lord opened their eyes, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria. As soon as the king of Israel saw them, he said, should I strike them down? Shall I strike them down? And Elisha said, you shall not strike them down. Would you strike down those whom you've taken captive with your sword and with your bows? Set water before them that they may eat and drink and then go to their master. So he prepared before them a great feast. And when they had eaten and drunk, he sent them away and they went to their master. And the Syrians did not come on any more raids to the land of Israel. We're going to save this next part for tomorrow because it fits better with the story for tomorrow. So I'll give you the rest of this tomorrow. Thanks for watching and join us next time. Thank you so much for journeying with us today at Simpler Bible. Together, you and I have looked at another passage of scripture and come to know the Bible a little bit better and enjoy God more fully. This video, along with all of our videos, can be found at simplerbible.com, where you can enjoy our Through the Bible in a Year course. You can also enjoy a wealth of resources, blog posts that take you a little bit deeper into the text, a Bible study format that you can use with your small groups or your family, and we're creating new content all the time, all with the commitment to help us be people who know and enjoy God more fully. Thank you so much for being part of it, and we can't wait to see you next time.